Gunshots rang out in the early hours of the morning in a remote part of Yobe State, and by the time the dust settled, a kidnapped herder was free, a notorious gang leader lay dead, and a difficult national conversation about security took a new turn. A local hunters group, working quietly but decisively with security authorities, rescued Alhaji Babawuro from captivity without paying a single naira in ransom. This happened in Yobe State. And yes, it is one of those stories that sounds almost unbelievable in today's Nigeria. Now let us look at this clearly. Alhaji Babawuro, a wealthy herder from Kurbunga village under the Shamka district of the Ngelsama Emirate in Fune Local Government Area, was abducted around 2 a.m. on November 29, 2025. Armed men came under the cover of darkness, took him from his home and disappeared into the night. This was not his first time. In fact, according to security sources, this was the 5th time he had been kidnapped, largely because of his perceived wealth. That single detail alone tells us something uncomfortable about the state of insecurity and targeted crime in rural Nigeria. If you are watching, please like this video and subscribe. The kidnapping was reported to the Damagum Police Division the following day, November 30th. Shortly after, the kidnappers reached out to the family with a chilling demand: 50 million naira ransom. At this point, the story followed a familiar and painful pattern Nigerians know too well: panic, negotiation, fear, and uncertainty. But then something different happened. While the police were preparing to escalate the case to the State Criminal Investigation Department, key actors stepped in. The Special Advisor on Security Matters to the Yobe State Governor and the Emir of Ngelsama held consultations with the Commissioner of Police. From these discussions came a strategic decision: engage a local hunters group known for its experience in kidnap rescue operations. This is where the story begins to shift. The hunters took over negotiations. They allowed the ransom demand to be reduced from 50 million naira to 7 million naira, not because they intended to pay, but because time was being bought. Time to gather intelligence, time to trace movements, time to locate the hideout. From this point, we need to understand how critical local knowledge became. Using their familiarity with the terrain, footpaths, forests, and movement patterns, the hunters tracked the kidnappers to Sandi village in Gulani Local Government Area. In the early hours of Thursday, December 11th, around 4:30 a.m., they moved in. No ransom was paid. Alhaji Babawuro was rescued alive. During the operation, the leader of the kidnapping gang, Ahmadu Shuwa, also known as Sumo, was neutralized. Another suspect, Muhammad Bello, was injured by gunfire. 2 other gang members were arrested and later confessed to the crime. Now, let us pause and analyze the deeper issues this story raises. First, the legal and procedural angle. Technically, law enforcement agencies remain the constitutionally recognized authorities for internal security. However, this operation involved a local hunters group playing a frontline role. This raises important questions. Under what legal framework do such groups operate? How are rules of engagement defined? What safeguards exist to prevent abuse or excesses? At the same time, Nigeria's security reality often forces unconventional solutions. The police, stretched thin, sometimes rely on local structures, vigilantes, hunters, and community defense groups, especially in rural and hard-to-reach areas. There is a tension here. On one side, the law demands centralized control of force. On the other, communities demand immediate protection. Another angle to this issue is accountability. In this case, the suspects and recovered exhibits are to be handed over to the Nigeria Police for investigation and prosecution. That handover process is critical. It helps maintain the rule of law and prevents a descent into unregulated justice. Now, let us place this story in the wider national context. Kidnapping has become a business model across Nigeria, north, south, east, and west. From highways to villages, farms to homes, the fear is constant. Economic hardship has pushed some into crime. Weak enforcement has emboldened others. And repeated payments of ransom have, unfortunately, sustained the cycle. For ordinary Nigerians, farmers, herders, traders, this insecurity affects everything: food production, transportation costs, school attendance, and even mental health. When a herder is kidnapped repeatedly, it is not just one family that suffers. Livestock management is disrupted, markets are affected, prices rise. And let us not ignore the historical trauma embedded in this. Many rural communities already feel marginalized, forgotten by the state, and exposed to violence. Each successful kidnapping reinforces that sense of abandonment. So when a local hunters group succeeds where others have failed, it triggers mixed reactions. Some Nigerians are celebrating this as bravery, resilience, and community strength. Others are uneasy, worried about the implications of civilians taking up arms even with good intentions. Let me ask you this. Do you think community-based security groups are a solution or a temporary fix to a deeper national problem? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's talk about the emotional and human angle. Imagine Alhaji Babawuro's family. This was the 5th time. The exhaustion, the fear, the quiet question that must have haunted them. Will he come back this time? And then the relief, raw, overwhelming relief when he was rescued alive without paying ransom. He has since been treated at the State Specialist Hospital in Damaturu and reunited with his family. That reunion is something we should not take lightly. On the other side, there are also families connected to the suspects, families who may now be grappling with loss, shame, or fear. This does not excuse crime, but it reminds us that insecurity leaves scars on all sides. Please like this video and subscribe if you value balanced, human-centered analysis. Now, let us examine the government and security perspective. From the government's point of view, this operation can be framed as effective collaboration between formal security agencies and traditional structures. The involvement of the Emir, the Special Advisor on Security, and the Commissioner of Police suggests coordination rather than chaos. It also sends a message: intelligence-driven operations, local collaboration, and strategic patience can yield results without feeding the ransom economy. However, the government will also be cautious. It must ensure that such groups do not become parallel security forces operating outside the law. Training, regulation, and clear boundaries are essential. What are the future implications? First, we may see increased reliance on community-based intelligence and local security partnerships. Second, there could be calls to formally integrate vetted hunters and vigilantes into auxiliary security frameworks. Third, criminal gangs may change tactics, either becoming more violent or more discreet. There will also be legal proceedings. The arrested suspects will face prosecution. Confessions will be tested in court. Evidence will be scrutinized. And the outcome will matter, not just for justice, but for deterrence. Internationally, stories like this also shape Nigeria's security narrative. They highlight resilience, yes, but they also expose gaps. As we reflect on this story, one thing is clear. Insecurity in Nigeria is not just a military problem. It is social, economic, legal, and deeply human. My viewers, if you are following this breakdown, please like the video and subscribe. This rescue in Yobe State shows what is possible when intelligence, local knowledge, and coordination align. But it also reminds us of how much work remains. Until communities feel safe in their homes, on their farms, and on their roads, the story is not over.